Castalia. So as you guys already know, Castalia is UW's MFA reading series. We've got 3 current MFA readers with us tonight, and we have 1 alumnus and a faculty member. So it will have first-year poet Lauren Schlesinger. Then we'll have Kim Halstead, Gabrielle Bates, and we'll take a break, in which you can get drinks from our bartender Ian. Tip him generously. And then we'll have Patrick Millian, alumnus in the poetry field, and Maya Sonnenberg, prose faculty member, read following our break. Thank you again to the Hugo House for hosting us. There's another event going on tonight here as well, so we're going to be having all kinds of literary fun. It's wonderful to be able to be in this space that's such a part of the Seattle literary community. Woo. Thanks, Hugo House. So our first reader tonight is first-year poet Lauren Schlesinger. Now, I've only just met Lauren a few months ago, but I have to admit, I love to imagine her childhood. I can see her family traveling around from antique shop to antique shop, collecting tiny objects. In her poems, Lauren brings these objects to a kind of terrifying life. She's got dolls and ballerinas and music boxes, and each thing has lots of little cracks, each in its proper place. Each history is unknown, no contractions, no extraneous information. Lauren sets each word in its own groove, and she crafts each poem to enact the eerie and profound. Lauren's a past winner of the Academy of American Poets Jean Allo Meyer Prize, and a recipient of Northwestern University Alumni Graduate Fellowship. For the past 6 years, she has taught English and creative writing in the suburbs of Chicago. Please welcome Lauren Schlesinger.
Guys, thanks for coming. And thank you to Abby for organizing this, and also to Rachel for such a lovely introduction. So I'm going to read a couple long poems and then a couple really short poems in between, so hopefully that gives you a nice little break. And all these poems are from, most of the poems are from Safekeeping, which was my manuscript as an undergrad, written under the direction of April Curdy. So thank you to April as well. So the first poem is entitled An Ode to the Eldest Church Ladies of Chavance, and Chavance is a pretty rural city in Illinois, and it's dedicated to Marjorie Adams, who's actually a blind woman. I think about now, she's probably about 94, and my older brother and younger sister and I used to sit with her on Sundays in a church pew. An Ode to the Eldest Church Ladies of Chavance. Waking with the last alarm, ladies hasten, press, and fasten. They drink the coffee that is burnt but hot, tasting without a sense of taste. They peer at the morning paper and pretend to peruse a bundle of drugstore coupons. They remain waiting for their breath to finish descending the stairs and come back within them. They are still blinded by their last dreams of the family dog, long gone, licking ankles beneath a vacant table of sons who devour their oatmeal. All are drifting towards the time of expiration, each lady ticking like her wristwatch that tells out one by one the seconds before the time of her absolute communion, when the body of the church will open onto her, bidding on her behalf. All other days, no voices upset the flowers on the walls or rise with praise for her baked offering. Before the mirror to set her face, she lingers, numbed by the silent sway of chandeliers at her ears. Rouge now pasted through her ridges. Warm fingers rise, but do not show, when again they trace what the years have made of her. She sits like a weight held upright for the sake of time, by the needle of her metronome, waning with the threat of silence. Great, so here's a shorter poem. It's actually only one sentence, and I'm really interested in art. So you're going to hear in this one that there's a lot to do with the idea of background and the sublime. Background. If only you could ask one painter permission to recede from the foreground each morning and inch backward onto the tall bridge of the oblivion and appear there only blunt as one brushstroke of sweet nothing cut into the thickness of paper into the face of a mountain. All right, so as Rachel said, I am really interested in the idea of collection and the art of collection. So this is actually about a ballerina in one of those music boxes. Maybe you had one as a child or your sister did, but when you open it, the ballerina spins around. Unfortunately, in this case, the ballerina has snapped off. So only the feet revolve. So that's kind of the predicament that the ballerina is in. Snapped off her feet. Love you, Patrick. Snapped off her feet. On the red stage, the severed feet revolve to the chime of metal teeth beating the hills of pinheads. Movement swallows this music box through the triple pulse of a waltz with denial that shimmies down perfumed walls and sprawls at a worn mirror face to swear for years no face spotted her own prima front facing the mirror as it looked after each pirouette. Divorced from a ballet company of one, the dancer and act are upset by a bodiless scene that frames her disability. The box is carpeted for a new act, with the pretension that it always mirrored incessant grace devolved from no body. Down in a pit before the stage, she is a hill of pins and tulle with welded legs. If she was able to stand, open her oval of arms, and bow her sealed, plastered face flush into her brown tulle, no ovation would sound in the box from a single tier of its box seats, once tailored to ascend in her honor. This box of ornamental space pulsates still with motion, wound and wound to wind away the wounded and memory of how she mastered beauty with force. Discipline had served her as a majesty and mastered her body until she carried none, but upheld the corpus of this box like the arrangement of her fingers. All right, so for something a little less grim, this poem is a short poem, just about a vein. So of course we all have them, so think about it. Indecent. The vein here in eggplant purple twists near the surface of a foot or behind one knee, all extending its endless fingers or its brothers into one even tightness seemed to be unbecoming. To the eye, these patterns of gridlock map out how many turns a soul must take from rejection, the root of discipline, to return to luminous exposure. Great. So this next poem, some of you may recognize from workshop, and it was the first full, somewhat decent poem I've written in Seattle, so it can give us all hope if you're stuck. This does have an unreliable narrator, so if you think she's crazy, it's not just you. Color problems. Home from work, so tired, I drop my bag at the door frame and kick off 2 sickled shoes. I turn on no lights, but I hear the water pounding fast, this out of hell against the tub. I must have turned it on. But it is not good water until it boils. To prepare, I take a brick of fig-scented soap and drop it over the balcony into someone's garden. To my husband, I write, do not forget to water the birds. Thank you, Grace. Beside the nest with 2 interwoven bird skeletons. Can I hear only water now that it is near ready? I wrench the handle to off and flush my ruby earrings down the toilet. I send my dress down the disposal. Into the bath, I step with every pen and cartridge. All that I have had, I break each one over my body. You should see the ink run, black and blue laces down my arms. Bleeding carbon black pollutes and fuses into black lead veins, the veins that divide color from color in a stained glass window. I see it. The plane of the body is a window without colors, but it is all well. My husband will be home soon to color between the lines of this house, to take care of it all. Even the faucet that now drips. Clear droplets disturb one grayed surface. Here with me, hours of drops until I recall that I never married. And I rise to water the birds myself. mentioned, let's check on time, so we're not reading to you for a year. That could be dramatic. So as Rachel mentioned, I do often write with lots of objects, and this one does have a fashion doll, aka Cheap Barbie, and also saucer and teacup for Barbie as well. So, and it is entitled Safekeeping, so it was the kind of feature piece for my undergrad manuscript. Safekeeping. The blue teacup fell forever underground through a crevice between the edge of the wooden floor and the cold, white fireplace. And you should have watched out for it, nudged it with a pinky further from the ledge, or moved the midday doll party altogether. But you had not thought it was that small, or maybe you had thought that same smallness would protect it, like the fashion doll, who never expected the house dog to bother or even to see the shoe she left behind in the hallway. And now it is disfigured and compacted, beyond use to the eye or to the foot that it belonged to, too small to fit even a miniature. One soggy crescent, it exists as a mockery of its own best feature. It now wears smallness as its limitation. And humiliation is born with the destruction of the small. You even feel your own face, upset and brought slightly downward. You mirror the face worn by the doll. Shame leaves you with silence inside yourself, to contemplate the proper disposal of leftovers. The uneaten shoe fits on with sympathy pains to feel even smaller. And there remains a forgotten saucer. The odds are against their safekeeping. Their mere existence is troubling. And you think it better for small goods to depart like a vanishing act. You make the doll face the ground and secure her hands behind her in the nook of her back. You find the crevice like a mouth, and together, underground, the shoe, its mate, and its saucer are brought down. She is barefoot and safe, plastic, dumb, and quiet, but more safe than you, since the humiliation you discarded fell forever to the hearth of your mind. Because there is no small thing too small to remember. Thank you so much for being here.
Hello? All right. They took the podium away. I don't know what I'm going to lean on now. Well, happy Veterans Day. I'm Tim. It is now almost the beginning of the middle of November, and it is at the point in the academic quarter when MFA students begin to feel as though they have stumbled into the third panel of a Bosch painting. Yes. Some kind of bird thing is prodding us into a vat of boiling tears. And though Halloween has come and gone, the Cenobites continue to show up. You guys obviously haven't seen Hellraiser. We start to suspect our own friends have been conspiring in our ruin. And failure emerges from the ladies' room with a freshly powdered face, ready for her encore. That's about the best I can do. Let us not deny the pleasure of our misery. How else can we know what our suffering has meant? After all, it is chiefly through pain that we can shake the mass of our nerves as violently as possible. I think Marilyn Robinson says it best in her essay, Facing Reality. Dante, she writes, who knew the world about suffering, had a special place in hell for those who were grave when they might have rejoiced. So continuing this hellish theme, I would like to introduce you to our next reader. Kim Halstead. It is my understanding that Kim was raised inside a Catholic convent. So you can imagine she knows a thing or two about redemption through pain. You are unlikely to find a better example of wholesomeness, traditional family values, moral character, and Judeo-Christian beliefs than you will in Miss Halstead, who once told me that she finds Raymond Carver's short stories repulsive not because of his writing style, but because his characters are just so sinful. When I asked her how she manages to be so upstanding, Kim replied in Shakespearean poetry. The impression of keen whips I'd wear as rubies, she said, and strip myself to death as to a bed, ere I'd yield my body up to shame. I hope this prepares you for what you are about to hear. Kim, take it away.
Thanks, Tim, for that. That was incredibly accurate. Okay, this is called Observation Journal, and it's going to be a bit of a group effort, which you'll learn as it goes on. Actually, right at the beginning. The bus driver says,
"Thank you for using Seattle Public Transport. This is Route 32. On your left, you'll see the famous Fremont Troll. At night, you can climb up his arm and touch his hubcap eye. At night, you can pull your car over and stop to take pictures. Sometimes you see people stick their head up the troll's nose. It's iconic. He sorts tourists like Coke."
the woman next to me has natural half moons in her nails, even on her littlest fingers. I imagine her chopping onions. The knife slides with the grain of the wooden cutting board. Her glasses migrate down her nose and she pauses to push them back up. Doesn't she know to wear her contacts when she's cooking? A man, a woman, the bus catapults them up and a water bottle clangs and rolls around the floor. Their knees touch. It was accidental. A woman's nostrils are flaring in time with my music. Her piercing, too high up on her lip, looks like a princess cut mole. She has blue hair. The bus driver says,
"This is Route 32. So then I was reading because I was wondering, and it turns out that orange is the least light color as one grows older. It's seen as childish. Blue isn't, though. Blue's popularity, already substantial among children, only subsumes more people with maturity. Isn't that interesting?"
Someone asks the bus driver,
Does this stop at Pike Place?
a man wearing distressed denim and nothing else reads a poem about swans aloud. His hair is too long and thin for me to be comfortable when his ponytail slides over my hand. He switches seats with his friend or lover next to him to help him with his motion sickness.
"I feel better."
His friend or lover says, I think about his hair on my hand and I want to vomit in his hood. I can see a jewel just barely through the woman's hair, but I can't see an ear. What if she just has a pierced head, a bedazzled headstone for where her ear used to be before someone sliced it off? The bus driver says,
"This is Route 32. Pour myself some gin at the kitchen table. I don't drink from the blue bottle the gin comes in. I have a mug dedicated to this purpose. It has abstract, tasteful geometric shapes piled on in layers near the handle. Triangles on triangles on triangles on..."
Someone shouts at the bus driver.
Back door!
I'm not sure if he's a professor, but a man who looks like Rafe Fiennes sleeps in a chair across from me, his hand wrinkling his forehead. A mostly eaten cup of applesauce rests on some newspapers by him. He's left most of the foil seal on, and I think about asking him if I can lick it off. The woman next to me has nicely groomed but stubby fingers, which she's using to swipe through pages of a book on an iPhone. I see something about being pleasantly lightheaded from a cigarette, but it's not enough to interest me in reading the rest. There's a nurse on the bus, eating Oreos directly from the package she has balanced on her knees like a TV tray. The bus driver says,
"This is Route 32. That's why you can never get too comfortable, you know. And my mother would warm up baby animals she found outside who were freezing to death and prop them up with towels and cardboard in our oven. I don't remember any of them. The squirrels with nubs where feet should be, and bunnies with flat ears and puffy pink slits for eyes, growing no more fur after she was done with them."
"I'm so glad you're with me."
a man says into his headphones.
A man with limp carrot-top hair, wearing a black wife beater and pinstripe dress pants and clunky hospital shoes, reads what looks like a phone book with half the cover missing. As it starts to rain, he becomes bored and pulls out a Walkman after tucking the book away in his satchel. The businessman in a suit smells of smoke and presses into my legs. The hot bus feels hotter. 10 minutes later, a woman sits down next to me and smells of corn and salsa.
My blood hurts.
She says, but not to me. My stop's next, I say. The bus driver says,
This is Route 32, around her, when we were lying on a blanket outside. I'm tired and I like to think of graffiti on the gates of heaven. Tell my mother it wasn't her fault. No more. The gates are locked, but there are no keys. Jesus was here. What do you think is there?
someone asked the bus driver.
Does this stop at Pike Place?
The man across from me sits in the accordion part of the bus. It flexes in time with my motion sickness. He's leaking dimes onto the seat next to him. His name tag says Chris, and he works at U.S. Bank. That explains why his insides are nothing but a coin purse. The bus driver says,
This is Route 32, the way it ends. If you opened me, if you kept peeling away layers of skin and muscle neatly shucked, my veins stripped from their moorings and pulled out from my nose in one unbroken tangle like a net, my skull stalled open and neocortex thinly sliced with an X-Acto knife and arranged delicately, carpaccio in a petri dish. Would you be able to see through the filmy, thin slivers when you held them against the light and photographed their cell walls?
I grab a pole, and where I put my hand is warm. I sit down and the seat is warm. A girl says,
I know I'll end up dead in a morgue someday.
a boy says,
Not if they never find your body.
laugh, 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 they say. The bus driver says,
This is Route 32, because he had this shit-eating grin and my mustard in his backpack, I told him. My uncle is the Prince of Saudi Arabia. They have dethroned him. They mounted his head in the streets, then burst his body under their feet like a fruit from the market. I was there, but now I am here.
a woman's leg fat bulges from a hole in her ripped jeans, like lava poised to burst from the ocean floor. I see Chris again, the one from the bank. He's patched up the hole in his side and no longer leaks. I feel as though someone has forcibly repainted my favorite end table. Sure, it looks new, and maybe it functions better as a table, but at what cost? Flour on a woman's watch. Was she making scones? Rolling the dough, but she had no one to take off her watch, and she could only stand idly as the dough rose and ground. The bus driver says,
This is Route 32, but you know, I lied to you earlier. My uncle is not the Prince of Saudi Arabia. I'm from Minnesota.
I wonder what the woman in the vest and red infinity scarf is reading. It's making her smile. Have you ever been to Minnesota? I want to ask her, but she's smiling. The bus driver says,
This is Route 32, split his head open because he didn't believe me, that I've never done the people I love harm. That's why I write on the gates, but he said you could only write the true things on the gates. And I said, who gave you that authority? And he said, Jesus. And I said, is Jesus the one hiding under your bed, licking your hand? And he tried to say something, but then...
Did you hear that? I asked the cop next to me.
My stop's next.
She says. A man scans a card and lowers up the aisle. All his eyelashes are ripped out. If they had fallen out, he wouldn't keep gouging at his eyes. I imagine his pupils are scratch-off lottery tickets, things rich and hidden just behind the black flaky film.
I'm going to kill anyone who looks at me.
He says. I look at him. The bus driver says,
This is Route 32. I'm talking to imaginary people, aren't I? You're not real, are you? But everything I've ever told you, every moment where I felt as though my blood vessels would burst, you were there with me. You were real, you were listening. Your insides were, at least. Sometimes when I see people, I think about what they look like underneath.
the woman next to me sleeps with earbuds in. Her head falls near my shoulder. An earbud falls out, and something plays on, as if from a gala I won't be invited to on the upper floors of a building I can't see. The bus driver says,
This is Route 32, and I told the people of the bus, the people that were trusting me with their lives, you leave me with nothing. You no longer offer your hands, so I must scour myself until I tear apart all that is smooth to rough and knit to smooth again.
the passenger asks,
Is this Pike Place?
rend yourself, I say to the bus driver.
Into.
He agrees and closes the doors. Thank you.
we're breaking the we're breaking the law. But for our next reader, Gabrielle Bates, she's always breaking walls of images and turning things that seem so innocent into these crazy, surreal moments of the grotesque, of what is so real and so present in the violence and tenderness of everyday life, and just exploding it in front of us in her poems. She's always working this balance. She's sort of a chimera with hooves and then with hands and all kinds of horses and broken fruit. So all of these images are swirling Gabby's imagination, but her language is so energetic and precise that you go with it, and wherever she is moving, the poem takes the reader's emotional experience, strategy by strategy, moment by moment, sort of like a piece of code. And in fact, she has been possessed by the Ada Lovelace, Lord Byron's only legitimate child, and the first writer of computer code, in a lengthy persona poem project. So through her surreal imagination, I've come to feel a real radical empathy for all kinds of creatures, even computers. Gabby was born and raised in Birmingham. She's the winner of the Gigantic Sequence Poetry Comic Contest. She's the managing editor of the Seattle Review. And finalist for everybody's prizes, from Indiana Review and Fairy Tale Review. You can read her poems in Rattle and Guernica, among other places. Please welcome Gabby.
Rolling.
Oh, wait.
Yeah.
Wait, was I not supposed to?
No, that looks good.
Okay. That's cool.
Shaping things up all so I don't use a piece of paint.
Am I still staying here to read them?
If you like, we can move the mic to the side also. What would you prefer?
Is it gonna be in the way of pictures?
Maybe. Sorry.
Sorry, I'm not.
That's alright. I haven't done this before either.
I'll be over here in the corner. You're like really in the dark too. Yeah, that's fine. On this side? Da-da. Okay, that's perfect. Is this perfect?
That's great.
So as I was walking here from campus today, the biggest spider I've ever seen suspended from a single strand, I almost ran into it, and I took that as a sign that I should read some Arachne poems. Arachne being a woman from Greek mythology that committed suicide, and Athena brought her back to life as a spider to live forever. And let's see, so this first one is a work in progress, and it has a visual component that either Abby or Patrick can help me out with.
Are we ready?
Yeah, I can wait until, is it gonna be like centered on the screen?
Um,
How do I make this?
that's good. Yeah, we can see.
Alright, it's currently untitled. This afternoon, we are all Arachnes. And that liminal space between strangled beast. Only the threads in our pockets breathe during the lunchtime rush. This afternoon, the question is when. Outside is catching cold in its hands and letting it, like a fat fly, go again.
Sometimes the only way to forgive people is to mythologize them. Behold the old white couple dining in silence. Who has asked them to be spokesmen of their race? Behold the whiteness of their downturned mouths. I think about the act of weaving a lot. The body as both motion and yarn. But what is our loom? The past? The past never gets better. On the way home, I pass minuscule birds hopping around an empty bottle of Gordon's London Dry Gin. I watch a woman at the bus stop make love to her brown cheek with the fringe of her scarf. I find proof in a gauzy flake of dead skin pulled from the back of my neck. If this was made, it can be unmade. The sun was warm and closer once. So that was that. Thanks for bearing with me. This September, someone who went to college with me and my husband committed suicide, and I've been working on a long poem about the experience of getting that news, and I'm just going to read the last 3 sections of it. I think they stand alone okay. And it's called Why We Sometimes Laugh Upon Hearing a Friend is Dead, for JW. 3. He did it in a car, but he didn't use the car. Unique, at least, I find myself saying. In town, bullets are not for sale, but eggs are. Honor system, bucks a dozen, fresh. There's a deer made of foam with an arrow in its back. I'd like to ride it around the trailer park where country music is always playing on the other side of a wire fence. Around and around. If I don't think too hard, the voices could be his with those long vowels, ripping like sheets to make rags, cracking like a plank to the floor. Why do I want to know where he rested the nozzle? Why do I hope it's the chest? The spiders have been busy this morning, covering the trees with their misty cradles. 4. Arachne hanged herself. Thread she lived by, and by it died. This is the myth. I never knew Jay to hunt. She poked fun at the sins of gods. He laughed at fences, but cried in prayer. I last touched a pew on my wedding day. Pause, play, pause, rewind, play, pause, close, open, rewind, play, rewind, pause, open, close, read. 5. Remember the manic joy of teeth in that mouth. How in the uncut footage he dances with the mother of the bride who is my mother, taking a phone cord and wrapping it around her waist until she is atop ready to be yanked spinning. And his dress shirt is white and wet with sweat, the tie blue reaching out like a vein from his neck. And we're pulling away in the long black car. He tries to hand us a lit sparkler through the window. So Frank O'Hara has a poem called Katie, in which he has a line that says, "Someday I'll love Frank O'Hara." And Roger Reeves read that poem and was like, "That's awesome, I'm going to write a poem called Someday I'll Love Roger Reeves." And then Ocean Vuong read that poem and he was like, "I'm going to do a poem called Someday I'll Love Ocean Vuong." And it was published in the New Yorker, so clearly I had to do one.
I respect that.
Yeah, it's not easy. So I decided I'd use that as a prompt, and I put that at the top of the page, and this is what happened. All of this stuff is new, no one has seen it, so thank you for listening. Someday I'll love Gabrielle Bates. It was the year I forgot how to eat cherries. Taking one out of the bag held out to me, I nibbled with my front teeth around the pit, knowing somehow this was the wrong way. Finally tossing the bloody thing under the gazebo with fruit still clinging to its seed. Or it was the time, shirtless, I decided to fry fish, oil popping and smoking in the cast iron skillet. The flat, translucent body lowered in my hands with a crack, that stink sound, my belly flesh branded with a spatter of brown spots. So immediate, the skin as something born. I stood staring down as the dark smoke rose, the spots continuing to burn deeper and swell. Ice surfaced as a nebulous concept. Brown, mine, hide. The fillet's pointed end, once muscle with a purpose to propel, flapped its crackling cornmeal black. Ice was wrong. My strangeness stays. I can see it now, having burst and shed its brown, the red, glossy, and petrified, when I pour that blue soap that smells like a woman thinks women should smell over my arms, a mess of thick, new blue veins, and rub it, frothing, to cover me white. This white washes away or implodes if I wait, cell by cell. Later, the tall black woman at the bus stop will sing to me, call the KKK, call the KKK, in a childlike falsetto, step touching her ragged sandals to the beat. I've wanted to know her name for 2 years now, but once again, while rain condenses in her hair, take my place under the overhang and stare. Silently, I smolder in my coat, a structure inside a structure in which I am waiting like a suitor for myself, teeth in one hand, hunger in the other. All right, last one. Maya loves fairy tales, so I thought I should read a new fairy tale poem for her. This is called Gretel, She Was an Only Child. Comes a time to return to the house you were born in. Comes a time to forgive your father for being weak, for hair like burnt ribbons that disintegrate down her back as she leads him hungry each evening to the kitchen. Climbs the counter and lays her body down atop a cluster of moldy turnip chins. Comes a time to see those charred trails that fell from her head at his touch as one cartographer's resignation. A cottage on the corner of pebble and bread you cannot cleave or eat, but can fold. Fold it into a triangle for the Trinity, mother, father, child. Sit on the porch, balance one point on your knee and flick it between the tall, crooked tongs the last 2 trees of the forest make. Another church is coming in. Truck beds full of stained glass, stone pews. Comes a time to make your own map out of that brother you invented in the dark as you climbed out your window for the first time. The muffled, slow break of a rotten jaw against a countertop. 2 bare feet on the sill, but 4 landing in the grass that was grass then, leading to the mouth of a forest. Lostness isn't lostness until you're hungry. You've been gone years. Concrete trucks spin like candy makers, claiming the neighborhood. Thank you.
All right, it's intermission time. I think it's like 10 minutes.
Yep.
Okay, be back here 10 minutes.